This is the Digital Formula Podcast, a show about digital transformations, why they fail, and how you can apply the formula to ensure that your transformation program will create the expected results by aligning your services to your strategy, architect solutions well, and deliver them in an agile fashion. Welcome to the Digital Formula Podcast. My name is Roland Woldt, and I'm the host of the podcast, together with my co-host, Mike Idengren, who is also on the line. Hey, Mike, how are you doing today?
Hey, Roland. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, Well, what do we do here?
Well, we're going to talk about digital transformation, and we're especially going to talk about how we really do it in a modern way, especially thinking about how we do the most important things first and who we're doing them for. So we're taking this modern approach to digital transformation, again, where we discuss agility and UX weaved through everything.
All right. So we will see how that goes and continues over the course of the different episodes that we have planned for the first season. But before we get to this, Mike, let's talk a little bit about us, and my suggestion is we're going to start with you. Can you say a little bit about you so that our audience, and maybe one or the other knows me from my other podcast, gets to know you a little bit better?
Sure. My name is Mike Idengren. I'm a tech head, a tech advisor, a world traveler, and a Massachusetts bike trail explorer, a science fiction reader, in case you're picking up a theme. I like technology and I like science, like Dune and Foundation, and a dog owner. I love dogs. So mostly I think of myself as a practical academic, kind of always learning and applying, getting some things wrong, and then quickly trying again, learning new lessons. I like most things technology, and it goes all the way to my computers. I'm a Mac person. I have the Vision Pro, the whole setup, every bit of technology I can get. I like a pretty interface, but I always want to be kind of ready to. I'm that guy that just wants to access the terminal and get under the hood as well.
But well, then I'm happy that I see your eyes while we're recording it, and not that creepy, whatever, artificial mirror screen thing that the Vision Pro has.
I saw a guy wearing that at the gym the other day. I thought that was a bit extreme, even for me. Yeah.
I found it scary. I saw a guy wearing this thing in a Tesla on autopilot. Oh. And I was just thinking, like, is this suicide, man? Why do you do this?
It's crazy.
Yeah. So maybe I'd say a little bit about me, right? Because some of you might not have heard my voice before. My name is Roland Woldt, and I'm working in that BPM EA area for about 25 plus years now. And I had various roles with various consulting organizations, Accenture and KPMG, but I also worked at vendors like Software AG and iGraphics. And now I'm playing the role of the host of this podcast, which I mentioned before is my second podcast. So shameless plug. For those of you who haven't heard it, there's also a podcast out there called What's Your Baseline, where we talk about BPM and EA, and we're right smack in the 80-ish episodes. So we're doing this for almost 3 years now. And here we have the second podcast where we widen the perspective a little bit more and look at the problems that organizations have in getting their transformations right. So maybe we go into the big topic of the day, Mike. And I'm pretty sure everybody had that question already. Well, what is the digital formula?
Yeah, so, I go to a lot of conferences, as I'm sure a lot of our viewers do. And the thing is you go to a conference and you go to the vendor hall and you just see software and technology solutions all over the place. And, we can buy the technology, we can buy the software, but the question is it really helping us get to the solution, the actual movement towards our goals and strategy that we're trying to get? Are we hitting our OKRs, our objectives and key results? Are we really making a difference? And the problem we're trying to solve with the digital formula is that although there's technical solutions everywhere, the cool one these days is artificial intelligence, AI. We can't go anywhere without hearing about some new AI solution, right? But the big question, this is not a new question, is how can we make the technology work for us instead of us working for the technology? So as we say, true digital value needs more than just cloud code and apps, right? We need help to focus on helping people use the technology investments to deliver on those important goals while also, at the same time, staying in compliance, such as security and safety and so on.
Well, there's a lot to unbundle here, but maybe we start with some definitions first. When you say digital formula, how do you define digital in this context? Is it technology driven, or what is your definition of that word?
Oh, because we say our assertion is that kind of true digital value needs more than just cloud code and apps. The LSA digital formula is an actual formula that has components on it that touch on people, process, and technology. Also not a new concept, been around since the 90s. But our modern take on it is we're looking at agile people who can pivot quickly, learn, to the lifelong learning, continuous improvement, all those kinds of things that are bundled in the word agile, we take very seriously as part of that formula. It also includes lean processes and governance, right? We need to make it so that people are able to understand processes. Writing a process and getting folks to understand and follow it, two different things, right? So we need lean governance and processes in the context of deploying scalable technology investments. So that means scalable in this case can mean generally starting small and growing up, investing more when we're ready to go big, right? We're ready and kind of making the conscious decision as to when do we need more technology, more licenses, more people trained, more, right? Mm-hmm. All of that is joined with a secure user experience. So that's an important part of the formula that says, look, we're trying to design this technology for people, whether it's internal to our company employees or whether it's external customers, to make them have a better experience at getting the things done they need to get done in order to deliver the value. Value from their perspective is paying their electric bill on a website, even something that simple. Mm-hmm. The value from the company's perspective is getting the payment, right? Is getting the bill. So everyone is interested in having a good user experience. Let's make it, in addition to that, a secure user experience. Let's build in that security, not think about it as an afterthought. When we can do those things together, those components of the digital formula, and we consider those full life cycle costs as part of it, because you gotta think about the entire life cycle of the cost, not just one and done, right? Then we can have reliable, sustainable business and IT services.
So give me an example. So maybe just as a recap, right? So it's 4 ingredients in your recipe, right? It's the people that you mentioned, lowercase and maybe sometimes uppercase agile. It's your lean governance, just good enough governance on top of it, right? And the process behind it. It's your scalable tech investment. And then it's obviously the user experience that you want to bring in, divided by the overall full lifecycle cost.
That's it.
Is that?
That's it. Great. I would say secure UX divided by that full lifecycle costs. All of that divided by the full lifecycle costs gives us the ability to have reliable and keyword sustainable business and IT services. Because look, the big digital project, everyone knows there's a lot of funding and a lot of focus and a lot of attention on the big digital transformation project. Question is, why are we transforming? And what about after the transformation? Well, we want to be able to provide better services internally to our staff and externally to our customers, externally to our partners. That's not a one and done. That's forever. So let's think about full life cycle cost and full life cycle services that we're providing.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So it's cradle to grave. But can you give a little example about what you've seen in the past, how organizations have applied this?
Yeah, so one example would be thinking about from an application portfolio management perspective. When we say, hey, we want some applications, all the software we talk about that we said we're going to invest in the software, it just keeps getting stacked up, right? So software solutions, folks just keep buying more software and expecting a different result. Well, what happens when they buy all that software is the licensing costs add up, people get trained on it, and then the new solution comes on that duplicates those features. So we have to think about the full life cycle costs of that software just stacking up. It's called technical debt, right? But the question becomes, and we've asked this over and over again when we do this analysis, is how is this software helping you, or that software helping you actually deliver sustainable services, reliable and sustainable services? Maybe 3 or 4 of them aren't that important to keep around. And when they say, yeah, that's kind of dated technology and people don't really like the user interface that much. Let's get rid of these 3 or 4 pieces of software. This is the one we'll keep. We'll continue to invest in. We'll put more investment here, turn off the other ones, and that will help us be able to say, look, we got just enough automation, flexibility. This product is going to grow. It's got it's people like the way it is already handling the business operations. Let's continue investing in that one. Put our apples in this cart, and let's focus on how we're going to leverage it to get to those, again, reliable, sustainable business and IT services.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you obviously spoke about technology, which I think most people see a digital transformation as a technology issue, right? I think there's more to it. And what I've seen is, and you mentioned it before in projects before, people never really defined the strategy, the objectives. What are the outcomes? They just say, oh, we need a new tool, as you rightfully so said, and then they deep dive into that activity of configuring a tool. They don't think about the people and how they enable them and how they get the actual result. And maybe they have some measurements where they go and say, oh yeah, let's see, how many trainings did we do? Right? As if the assumption that Mike goes through a training and now he's an expert in the tool would be sufficient, right? And they never close the loop to say, okay, do we actually improve our business performance, right? So in my perspective, digital transformations more often than not are tech projects with a label on it versus a real transformation of the organization.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, thinking about why we're doing all of this digital transformation is important. Some of the ways that has been captured before in terms of consulting speak are OKRs, for example. Hey, what's our objectives and what are the key results we expect to get out of them? That's a pretty simple way of just saying, look, let's not just write down the things, another thing, smart objectives we heard before, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So great. That smart objective, you write it down, but now what? Who are we holding accountable for getting results in this thing? And what are the results we're expecting from this thing? So it's good to do the basic things like figuring out what your OKRs are and then saying, all right, now let's look at the investment, the technology investments we're going to make. The full life cycle technology investments we're going to make. What can we, from an agility perspective, so I don't just say agile, we actually mean agile, right? Can we buy a starter package today of our technology solution, just a few modules in ServiceNow, for example? And can we scale up over time? Can we learn how we're using the product to actually hit our OKRs? Are people actually able to use it in our company? Is it so unwieldy that we can't train people effectively how to use it quickly? Well, then if all of those kind of evaluations don't go well, then our quote unquote experiment with this technology fails and we quickly pivot to something else. Because one thing about software and technology in the market, there's a lot of options out there. As much as possible, why don't we just experiment, see how it goes, and try to and pivot if we need to.
Yeah, I agree. The quote from Mike Tyson came into my mind, where he said, "Well, all plans are good until somebody punches you in the face." So you actually have to do it, right? And do the small little, as you said, little snippet of implementation and see if it works, how it works, right? And I've seen in the past horrible user interfaces, for example, where people just cobbled something together. And the more widgets on the screen, the more buttons that were, the better it was. And nobody looked at, is this thing actually usable? Is it process oriented? Is it whatever, context sensitive, so that people actually can accomplish a task in the UI and all those type of things.
Now, from an agility perspective, I do want to be realistic here, because there are some kinds of investments we're going to want to make where we want to lay what is called architectural runway to be able to say we're going to make a big investment up front, and that way we're going to have economies of scale in actually deploying it, having a platform to build software products and coding on top of it. Something like it used to be, the classic example is an ERP, right? It's like SAP, right? Mm-hmm. Or ServiceNow in the case of an IT service management solution, strategic portfolio management solution. It does a lot of things these days, right? And if you're going to commit to the platform, it's going to have some major investment in training of people and getting configured and that kind of stuff up front. Sometimes it makes sense to centralize those decisions and say we're going to commit to this because it's lower risk for the kind of business that we're doing, for the kind of requirements we have, for the kind of objectives we have, the key results we're looking for. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. When possible, we want to think about those, especially software as a service, cloud-based solutions that allow us to try a little bit, learn, and say, okay, we're going to do a little bit more. Services, a good example of a company that's done well with this is Atlassian. All of their products, Jira, Confluence, you can buy over the web and do subscriptions to them. If you can do subscription-based pricing, well, you can try something out, scale it up to 100 people, 5 teams, see how it does when it scales up. If it doesn't, we can pick something else. That's the beauty of those kind of software as a service-based solutions. Great for agility.
But I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about all those topics either today or in future episodes ad nauseum. But I want to give our listeners or our viewers, hey, this is not an audio podcast, this is a video podcast. Hooray. Give them a little break. And we're going to play a couple of seconds of music, but I want you to think about, well, what have you, dear viewer, seen in the past, how your digital transformations worked or didn't work. And we will come back in a minute or a couple of seconds, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how such a digital journey, such a digital endeavor will look like when you engage with an organization like Mike's firm, which we'll talk about then as well. So we'll see you after a little break and continue from there.
Are you ready to supercharge your team with Scaled Agile? Hi, I'm Christy from Lean Scaled Architects, where we architect outcomes. We're here to transform your team into a powerhouse of efficiency and innovation. Unlock your potential with SAFe training, starting soon. Dive into architecture March 26th through 28th, master product management on April 3rd and 4th, become a Scrum Master on April 9th and 10th, or lead the change on April 16th and 17th. It's a power-packed 4 weeks. Don't miss out. Jump in at leanscaledarchitects.com/safe-training or email us at info@leanscaledarchitects.com. Let's innovate together.
And we're back with our initial episode about the digital formula with Mike Idengren. Hooray. So before we go into how the digital formula will be applied, to a project, maybe let's take a step back, because Mike is running his own company called Lean Scaled Architects, who by coincidence are also the sponsor of this show here, as you might have heard in our little break. But one thing that Mike does and his firm does is obviously living the digital formula. Mike, can you talk a little bit about how you took the formula and applied it to your organization?
Yeah, so thanks for that intro, Roland. We actually do practice what we preach. The Lean Scaled Architects is made up of folks. People in our company are not just a bunch of technical architects. There are business architects. There are agility folks, agility at scale folks. There are IT service management folks who help with digital strategy. So we kind of organize the way that we deliver that formula into 3 lines of service. So the first one being agility at scale and lean portfolio management, how we actually help folks practice the basics of agile. And that could just mean changing the culture, thinking about how we do small team scrums and use Kanban, to scaling it up to big teams of teams, right? And helping with lean portfolio investments. How do we actually figure out, maybe we should invest in this smaller chunk of this software now and do the bigger chunk of development later on when we learn some lessons, right? That's the kind of thing that those folks do. Our Agile Enterprise Architecture group works with our lean portfolio and Agile group to say, hey, how can we design those lean processes and have enough lean governance around our technology so that it doesn't impede on the user experience, that folks can actually use these products effectively to deliver on their goals, right? And that can mean process design, governance, risk and compliance, modeling and analysis, and things like application portfolio rationalization to truly look at our applications to say, hey, there's too much technical debt here. We need to figure out what to do with these old applications and so on, right? And our third line of service is digital IT service management. So we would say, hey, we need to think about digital, the concept of a digital modern IT department in a way that helps us, again, hit our objectives and key results, not just invest in technology for technology's sake. Right? And that extends to IT service management. How do we deliver those services, those IT services, in a more effective way in terms of 2 contexts? Number 1, business services. The reason a company exists, right, is to provide good business services to their customers or their constituents if we're talking government. And the other side of that is IT services. Well, of course, we're going to need application services, and we'll need a bunch of technology services under the covers and routers and switches and hardware and all kinds of things to power the applications that power the business services, right? So those 3 lines of services work together to deliver on that digital formula.
Yeah, that makes sense. But let's take a step back, and I'm looking at our little cheat sheet that we have open here while we record this. I know you have a 3-step approach that you use to apply to the projects that you do. Can you talk a little bit about what that approach is, and B, where the benefits are if you do this approach versus a pure tech implementation?
Sure. So we have a basic 3-step approach. It's discovery, roadmaps, and transparent execution. Now, at a high level, there's nothing special about this. I mean, the way that these typically are broken up is in the discovery part, we're asking, hey, who and why, right? We want to understand the organization's goals. Remember, we talked about OKRs being a simple way to do that, objectives, key results, and what the typical user experience personas and pain points are. Where is the pain? What is blocking us from being able to hit our OKRs? And let's not try to tackle everything. Let's prioritize and think about the most important goals that we have and the outcomes we want from the organization in that discovery phase.
Can you give an example that you've seen in the past for this?
Yeah, so a typical example might be, hey, we've got all kinds of websites in a large company, and we've got all kinds of people that want to use these technologies, but they have to remember all these different passwords. And, our security people, they keep saying these passwords need to have 18 characters and have to meet all these requirements. And none of our programmers are doing this. And so not only is our user experience terrible in using these things because people have to remember all these different passwords, but our security compliance is not good because it's not very automatically enforceable across all these different websites. So we might say, this is a major pain point because we're a technology company, or actually any company needs websites and needs internal technology these days. So that might be a major pain point enterprise-wide. That is a very serious concern for the Chief Information Security Officer and the line of business owners who are very interested in getting people to have good experiences and generating revenue. That's a 2-for-1 problem.
Yeah, and one thing that comes through in between the lines is obviously also an approach that you use where you go and you define your different personas, right? Your different target groups and everything. And I want to go down to the next step, the roadmap, where you say, okay, hey, you have certain stakeholders, you have certain personas that you put in there, and you build your roadmap according to those.
Yeah, and this is the great thing about this approach is after we discover the pain points and who has those pain points. In the example I gave, everyone has to log in and secure and authenticate themselves. But some people might be finance folks needing to get access to the finance system and have more of a finance management kind of concern. Others might be partners and have partner concerns of being able to access key data, but being blocked from accessing internal company sensitive data, right? Either way, we got to discuss in the roadmap phase the what, when, and how, right? So what we're doing here is we're looking at those pain points and we're saying, let's define and value, chunk, and prioritize key roadmap investments and architect and design a future digital state. So in the case of the example we gave, this is a classic example where a centralized, what we call in Scaled Agile, an architecture runway that needs to be laid, right? We need to lay some centralized technology solution. It's called single sign-on, SSO, where we can actually say this is the standard on how everybody logs into websites internally. All of our client, all of our customers, all of our employees internally and our partners will use this SSO solution. That becomes a policy by the CISO. And everyone loves it because they don't have to enter their password 100 times either. So that's a nice solution that we figure out in this roadmap and say, we're going to do version 1 today, maybe just internal. Version 2 is going to include partners. That's what I mean by chunking it. Because we can't do everything at once, but what can we do that gives the most value?
Yeah, and I have to think about a little video that you posted on your YouTube channel about the space shuttle and how it lands, that you have to have enough runway being built so that the space shuttle can land somewhere while they were planning that whole program many years ago. So this is also nothing super new, but obviously not seen a lot there. So maybe if I would say it in my words, you have the actual problem to solve, whatever it is, like a single sign-on or the refresh of a UI or a consolidation of apps. But then you also need to do some foundational work on the bottom to say, okay, hey, yeah, we need to understand what the pattern is. We need to understand how we, from a structural, architectural perspective, go and enable future iterations of those implementations so that we don't ask the same question all the time.
Right. It's good to have that reusability, right? And lay the foundation for the future as part of a great
For sure. So now, Mike, now you have a plan, which is great. A lot of organizations don't have that. So now you have your plan. What's next?
So we have a flexible plan, right? A plan that is subject to learning and changing, which is part of lean portfolio management, one of our Scaled Agile practices. And then it's time to execute in rapid iterations to say, hey, let's figure out the who, how, and where, right? We are in the execution of digital efforts. We're generally changing the way people work by using more agile processes, right? So this is the culture change. It's the hard part, right? I am a proponent as much as possible. I'm an advocate of starting with small groups that are receptive to a different way of thinking, have some success with them, be able to let them talk about their success internally because they're trusted. You're generally an advisor coming in from the outside. You want trusted folks on the inside to talk to each other, say, you got to try this Agile thing, man. It's great. All right, we're able to produce stuff, valuable things, push it out faster, and we actually are able to go home and have more time with our family. You want folks to be able to say that as success stories so that you can actually be invited to come back and scale it up to larger teams of teams, for example, right? That's just one part of it, of that execution phase, right? So we're leveraging EA process application and the technology design tooling. We're mapping out detailed processes. We're selecting some of them for automation. And as we're doing this, as we're helping to help developers prioritize what they should code and test and deploy in small chunks or implement in systems, right? As we're doing this, we're taking those OKRs all the way at the beginning of the project that we discussed, and we're saying, hey, how close are we to getting those results that were promised, right? What do we need to do to course correct? In order to have that transparency, we need to have dashboards that are really showing the results of the day-to-day efforts in a way that is understandable in the context of the key results we expected to have. So that leadership transparency is a really important part to make sure that we have the feedback at every level to do the course corrections.
So 3 things: discovery, right? Personas, the who, the why. What is it that the problem is? The second step is coming up with the roadmap. What has to be done, when and how, which is the little flavor of architecture in there, capabilities. And then it's obviously the execution in a way that everybody's on the same page and you can see what the progress is. And if we accomplish what we had as an objective, which is a business change, not just, like I said earlier, oh yeah, we did 25 trainings for this target group. And speaking of which, Mike, time flies. We're getting to the end of our allocated time. So let me thank you for the introduction into the digital formula and maybe do a little recap, of the episode. We obviously will have show notes where we will have things written down, what we spoke about. We will also put some graphics that we have on our little cheat sheet in the show notes if you want to review them after you viewed this episode or listened to this episode. But we basically spoke about what is the digital formula, right? So the 5 things: agile people, lean governance processes, scalable tech investments, a secure UX divided by the full lifecycle costs that then give you those reliable, sustainable business and IT services. And that was quite a mouthful. And then we looked at, what's the 3-step process to accomplish this and being successful in digital transformation, which is obviously the 3 steps of discovery, roadmap, and then the transparent execution.
That's it.
And with that, Mike, obviously there's a lot of questions, one of the questions that I would have if I wouldn't know better is, where can people learn more about this approach? And how can people reach you?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, lsadigital.com, or you can email us. You can email me at mike@lsadigital.com. We're happy we love having discussions around this kind of stuff with folks and organizations. I mean, we've seen this done. Roland and I used to work at a Big 4 consultant firm. We've just seen this done badly so many times, and it frequently comes down to bad communication internally or with consultants. It comes down to those kinds of misalignment of goals, and we really like to be able to hear about those problems and help solve them, even if it's just to fix an ongoing engagement, not to start over from scratch. So we absolutely want to hear from you, and we want to help you actually really get that value you're looking for.
Well, and maybe as a little incentive for those of you who have made it to this point, we're obviously offering for the first 10 people who reach out to us an hour of free consultation. We're happy to have a look at your problem and come up with some creative ideas how to solve this, applying the digital formula. Great. And with that, we're at the end of our episode. I hope, dear listeners, you liked it. We will have more of them. So as a little reminder, this podcast will come out every other week. And if you look in your podcatcher of choice, you already see there are 2 more episodes on launch date, so you can continue to listen to us. And we would be happy to have you as a guest the next time. And with that, I wish you a great day, and we're looking forward to see you in the next one.